Hi there, and welcome to this Tech Lab session where we're going to go over CI/CD integration, so in other words, continuous integration and continuous deployment, and what that would look like for Synapse Analytics workspaces. A couple of just quick shout outs. So I base all of this I base on the work of Bradley Ball at Microsoft. Um, So obviously, uh, you can find all of the instructions of how to actually set this up from scratch in Synapse Analytics on his tech community post, and I'll link that in the description of this video. The one thing I just want to quickly go over is around the sort of the prereqs for this video. So in order for you to do this, you need to have an Azure DevOps project set up with an initialized repository. You need to have the Synapse Workspace add-in from the Azure DevOps marketplace installed. And you need to have set up a um, um, a service connection in your DevOps project that has a service principal configured with subscription scope for the target as your resource group where your production or your target environment is set up. So let's kind of work through why CI/CD is interesting. So um, continuous integration and continuous deployment is an agile way of handling sort of a gated release pipeline where you develop code, you build it, you do your approvals, you do your code review, and your retros, and it gets signed off, merge into a branch, and you release it out into your systems for testing or for production, depending on your sort of practices. So a common way, and I've worked, a common way is to handle branching with development. So let's say, um, uh, you're working um, in a Git repository, and you have your main branch in your repository. So you need to, or user story is created, right? You then branch to that story, and then in that story, either, well, if you're working alone in this and there's sort of non-iterative, uh, um, how should I say this? If there's non-iterative subtasks or features that needs to be developed for the story, then you can sort of work in this one branch, right? But let's say you have some dependencies chains, so you branch to a sort of an initial task to set up whatever artifacts you need, like if it's a linked service, for instance, or whatever it may be, right? And then you merge that back down into your previous branch, and then you merge that back down into your main branch, and then you release it out, or you prepare it for build and you release it out. Now, this is kind of a common practice, and then it quite a few teams work this way, or quite a few development teams work this way. Now, what are the benefits of branching? So obviously, the benefits of branching is that you don't um, mess up or pollute code with your development efforts until it's put together, or until it's merged down into the previous or the previous level of branches, or the main branch, right? Um, and the other benefit of branching is that when you or the way you control this when you merge down, so you don't pollute your code, is obviously to have a policy around merges. So your policy is to merge using pull requests. So this is a very common way of working. And a pull request becomes sort of an authorization gate where you can review code. You can take a diff and see what has changed in between the code. There's some fantastic sort of conflict resolution or sort of code conflict resolution features in Azure DevOps that helps you, if there's differences in some artifacts that have been edited independently. So let's say someone modified this branch whilst you were working in this branch, and then you try to merge it down, and there's some artifacts that don't look the same. Uh, at during the pull requests, you have the ability to rectify those sort of conflicts, and then you can have a set of approvers that sort of sign off that you're allowed to merge down and that the code is healthy and happy and conforms to standards. And then you can just go ahead um, and merge it down. It will then generate a build artifact, and then we can set up a sort of a build process or build pipeline that generates an artifact or a compiled version of the code. Cool. So let's have a look at how this is set up. So I talked about the repo being set up. Oh, the other thing you're also going to need is two Azure Synapse Analytics workspaces. One that represents your development workspace, where you're going to be actively working in, and one that represents your production or UAT workspace or integration workspace or pre-prod, whatever it may be, right? And the important thing is that your dev workspace must be connected to an initialized repository um, inside of your project. Now, the one thing I want to say, the way this has been set up is slightly different, and this was something that's highlighted in Bradley's part 4. So if you're following Bradley's series, um, you must just note that there is an unexpected feature or bug. He changed something mid-deployment or uh, mid-tutorial, should I say, that makes it a little bit hard to complete some of the steps. But if you read some of the commentary, he actually alludes to that, and you can sort of work that out. Um, right, so let's have a look at the workspace. It doesn't really matter if it's an empty workspace or not. There are a couple of things that you have to think about. So uh, the, there are a couple of things that are not supported by the workspace or Synapse workspace add-in in DevOps, and that is things like Spark instances or Spark pools, dedicated pools, etc. All the sort of the DDL features don't, or DDL and DML code is not managed in that. So you're going to have to manage that as a SQL data project through Visual Studio. But I'm will actually have in a future series, I'll show you how to, um, and we'll probably use the same project, just a different release pipeline and different repository to manage the actual databases and the pools, the ARM scripts around those to deploy and create those dedicated pools, and also how to manage the sort of a CICD process to build and release your warehouse or your SQL data warehouse pools, etc. Right? So let's get started. First setup. So I said you need to have your dev workspace Git connected. So in the Git configuration, the one thing that's important is on the publish branch. Don't use the default, and I can show you that here. So if we just let's say we're gonna configure it here. I'm just gonna drag this off screen quick. Oh, that doesn't matter because you will still see it. Um, I'll do this in post. This will be blanked out. I'll most likely blank this one screen out until it's safe for me to show my tenancy and not show everyone's organization. Okay, so when you should now be able to see my screen. I'm just going to pause here for a second. Right, at 11 minutes in, and I'm just going to connect to my repository or my project, and then my repository. So you see this publish branch. So this is where when you publish, it's going to compile the ARM scripts that contains your all your workspace code. So or workspace artifacts. So this specific branch, you must change this to use your main branch, okay? Or else this deployment doesn't work. Right, so we're gonna go and cancel that because this is my production or my target branch. Right, then I think that was the main setup. The other thing that you also need um, to think about is when you set up your, and I can quickly show that, for your, in order for your release pipelines to work, in your project settings, you need to have a service connection, right? So you need to create a new service connection of type, I'll say this of type service principal. So it's the automatic feature, right? And the target, so the scope of the service principal must be at subscription level, and you must have granted, and you'll see when you select um, um, there's a drop down for the resource Azure resource group. That must be the same resource group that you have um, for the production target workspace, right? So this one is CICD demo RG. The other thing that's important as well is that you have granted the service principal contributor access to both uh, um, the workspace itself or the workspace resource in here, and also and that you have, sorry, just hold on, let me switch back, and that you have um, made it, and here I've added sorry, yeah, the service principal that you've granted it access as well to or as Synapse administrator um, on the production or your target workspace. If you don't have this, it's not going to be able to deploy any resources within the workspace. Cool. And now, right, then the other thing you obviously need to do, make sure is that, well, no, that would have been during the setup. Not going to go through the basic workspace setup. Cool. So let's take this example. So let's create a story, and I want to sort of follow this one where I'm going to create one task. So there are a couple of things that we just got to be cognizant about. So um, you can't manage, as I said, the databases, or the pools, so the Spark pools um, uh, or the Synapse dedicated pools, or any other DDL actions. They can't be managed here. So serverless DDL, you can't create serverless databases. You have to do that as a separate activity, and that's going to be in another series on how to manage those. So we're going to work with things like linked services. We're going to work with things like pipelines, scripts, etc. So the first thing that we have, so if we go to our dev branch, so sorry, let's work with this. So if we go to our board, we have uh, a user story here called create new pipeline. So I'm gonna take this one. So it is as Tech Labs. We want a new Synapse integration pipeline created that creates a Parquet file with a UTC date timestamp in the root of the workspace as ADLS Gen 2 default storage account. Okay, pretty simple pipeline. So it is a pipeline that will just generate a Parquet file, right? And we want the pipeline to be deployed and tested in dev, deployed and tested in dev, and deployed into production. Okay, that's our acceptance criteria, very simplified. Cool. So, first things first. Well, we need to develop some stuff. So we go into our workspace. So we're going to be working with pipeline, and first thing we want to do is we want to take a branch. So we're going to drop down here and we're going to say new branch. And we're going to follow the user story way. So this is, we're going to copy the name. We're going to leave the author or the owner alias in there. So that's my alias. And ooh, okay. And then we're going to remove the oopsie. Right, and like so. Create new branch, boom, and we wait for everything to refresh, and we can see here that that's the branch we're working in. So if we go back to DevOps and we go back to our repositories and see, we look at our branches, we can see that, hey ho, here's our branch. Okay. If we click on branches, we can also see here how ahead or behind things are. So everything is as compared to our default main branch. So if we look at this new branch that we created, so we can see it's 0 versions or iterations or sorry, commits behind, and it's 0 commits ahead, right? So it's the same as our main branch. You can see we have some other branches here that probably should be deleted, and we can walk through some of those housekeeping steps a little bit later. Okay, cool. Let's step in here. So if we look, so let's just go back to this user story. So create Parquet with UTC datetime stamp. Okay, so we need to do a bit of testing. So first thing, oh, I have a SQL script here that does exactly what I wanted to. So this connects to our serverless pool. Yeah, that looks like the code that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Oh, sorry, forgot. There's my SQL code. Cool. Then we're going to go to our pipeline and we're going to go, I'm going to create a new pipeline. So I'm not going to worry about any weird folder structures and that. This is going to say create UTC date file. Right. Oopsie. Sorry. Uh, create UTC date file. Okay, so the first thing is first we're going to need I'm going to use a copy transform. Oopsie daisy. Let's make that a bit more readable. So I'm going to use a copy data task. So it's going to be create bar. Okay, so this is obviously not generic pipelines, so this is not going to be used for anything else. A single purpose hand-coded thing, right? So first things first, we need to create a data set. So we want to use the Synapse Analytics. Sorry. We don't want to use the dedicated pool runtime. We want to use the on-demand runtime. And for linked service, we're just going to go and take our default workspace. We're going to not do any validation, and we're going to call this one. And here's what's important. You need to have standardized naming conventions because you might have some reuse cases. So it's important to make sure that your linked services, your your linked services and your will come to me in a second, and your data sets carry, like all dependent objects, carry the same name in all environments, be it your dev, be it your production, be it your integration, pre-prod, whatever it may be, right? So I'm going to call this, I don't know, Synapse, Azure Synapse SQL on demand. Sorry, let's make it serverless. Right. And then we go ahead and click OK. Then I want that to run a query, and we're going to go ahead and paste in that lovely query. Hit preview data. Ooh, and failed. Why? Oh, I don't have access rights. Oh, okay. I'm going to pause this and I'm going to troubleshoot. Be back now. Right, I have finally figured out what the problem was. So let's just step through this. So this had to do with the on-demand workload. So I just need to set up a new linked service. So I'm going to go ahead and so I'm not going to use the default linked service. So I'm going to create a new one. So let's just create a new one, and we're going to set this to on demand. Sorry, not in demand. On demand, or SQL on demand, we're going to call it. This is going to be an auto runtime. We're going to use a connection string. We're going to put in the FQDN. Database name is, I've created an on-demand SQL database. Right, let me just check that that's the correct name. Yes, there it is. We are going to use managed identity, and we're going to test the connection, and hopefully this works. Yay! Sorted. Okay, so I'm going to hit commit and say okay. So there's some funniness that happens. That's I actually made a mistake here. So that linked service cannot be run that way. So we have a key vault we're going to be using. I think this is my Tech Labs key vault. Yes, it is. So I'm going to go ahead and create a secret that I'm going to use for the connection string. And then we're going to go back and modify that one. So let's just quickly go here. And we're going to go and find my Tech Labs key vault. Hide that. Please ignore everything you see. I'm going to create a secret. Create a new secret. This is going to not be whatever is in there. This is going to be for that. So I'm going to call this CICD demo dev. That way we won't get deployment failures. Right, so dev is going to be that. Right, and there we go. Oh, sorry. There you go. There's our secret. Create that one, and then we're going to create one for prod as well. Okay, and these are obviously going to be set up or be modified. These would be modified. Sorry, let me just copy that. These would be modified in using PowerShell scripts, just to make sure that the sort of the right environment is selected. Okay, so I must remember I have that's the one I must use now. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. And we're going to go back to our demo, go back to our pipeline, and let's have a quick look. Okay, there we go. So, right. So we should, yeah, now SQL on demand connection is working fine. So if we go back to our query and we preview data, we should get that you see, yeah, there you go, sorted. So now that that's working, the next thing, so I'm gonna just discard this because I don't need that. Right. So the next thing we're gonna need to do is we're gonna need to drop this into a data lake folder. So we're gonna sync it. Here we're gonna use the default, sorry, new data set. So this is an Azure Data Lake Gen 2 storage account. So that was, if we go back to the user story, so must be into an ADLS Gen 2 default storage account. So that's what we're doing, ADLS Gen 2. It also was supposed to be a Parquet file, right? Parquet file, yep. So that's what it is. We're going to call this UTC date, and we're going to abbreviate Parquet, PQT, and then file. Right. Linked service, we're going to do our default file system. Oh, and primary FS. So here's another thing. When you set up your workspaces, so obviously your file systems needs to be named the same, so the containers. So any major things, but we'll cover that in a future video. So we're going to say Right, file system. And I'm going to drop it into, I'm going to have a create a folder called UTC date. Sorry. And then we're going to use data lake best practices, lowercase, UTC date. And the file name, I'm going to leave empty. I'm going to let it generate its own Parquet file name. Right, and then we're going to hit OK. Oh, sorry, forgot. Import schema, none, obviously, so it doesn't try to connect. Great. So now we have a source and we have a sink, and we should be good to go. Let's go ahead and debug this guy and see if he works. So he's in running, and succeeded. Great. So the copy activity seems to work. We've written one file, 309 bytes. If we go and we look at our workspace, our primary FS, and UTC date, and there's our Parquet file. Great. Okay, cool. So this works fine. Right. So let's then go back to our pipeline. So we can close that. We don't need to look at this. All right. So I'm happy that I need to. Well, first of all, I need to commit this guy. So I'm just going to go ahead and say commit. Right. And then I'm going to go ahead and commit this guy. Actually, there's a change we need to do to this. So remember we created that key vault. So I want to manage this. Wait. Actually, we're going to have to manage this as a parameter. Right. So let's just create a new parameter, and this is going to be hostname. On-demand host. And we're going to drop that as our default value. And we're going to add that then. Right. We test connection now. That should work. Works fine. Okay. Okay, so we're publishing that linked server. So now this is something in our deployment or release pipelines that we need to be cognizant about. So we have a host name here that needs to be managed. Okay, so that is that's something that we're going to have to worry about, right? So let's go ahead and commit. And I'm going to just trigger another debug just to prove that that is working fine. So here we go, queued, in progress, and success. Okay. Now if we go back here, let's go back to our primary FS into the UTC date folder, and now we have two files there. Yay! Okay, so this definitely works. Sweet. Let's close down that, and now we can commit. So let's go and re-evaluate our user story. So let's say, so we have now, that's all good. Happiness is, so that looks all good. Right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to, well, so I'm going to create a pull request for this guy. So how we now are going to get this over into production, and we'll get into how this works in a moment, is we're going to, now if we step back to, I'm just going to step back to this overview. So remember what we had, we we took a branch, right, and we did some dev work, and at some point in time we need to merge this back into our main branch. So in order for us to do that, we need to create what is known as a pull request. So a pull request is a way of pulling a branch back into our main. So we're going to go here, and you can see on the drop down, it says create pull request. Now what that's going to do is that's going to open up our pull request in DevOps. So we can give it a title. So I'm just going to cheat. I'm going to copy paste some stuff. So let's just go back to the board. And we're going to go here, copy that name out, and we're going to go story, user story, and created pipeline and have run unit testing in dev. Okay. Um, if we have reviewers, well, currently there are no reviewers, so I'm not really going to worry about that. I'm going to go and attach the uh, the user story. Is this the right user story? Yes, right. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and just link that. And then we're going to go ahead and create this. Boom. Cool. So now automatically it takes you to where the pull request is. Now, what I just want to show quickly before I step through the build pipeline. So we have, as you can see, in the pull request, it gives you some really quick logic. So it looks at this merge conflict. So if we click back to our branches, remember we showed this like ahead, behind. So if we look at this branch that we took, so I've done 6 commits. So I'm 6 commits ahead of master and 0 behind, right? And then you can see that this one, I don't have to worry about this one. This should be deleted. And so should this one. But so you can see that we have stuff, and you can see that there's a pull request to bring these 6 commits in. So if we step through here, we get back to this point. So at this point in time, we probably had some form of review policy set up, or you can set up some review workflows where reviewers would be automatically assigned. You'd get an email notification that you have, there's a pull request, and you need to go and review and provide recommendation. And at here, you can go and you can look at the code, so we can see all the different JSON objects. So you can see them all. And you can go, yeah, this looks good. And this looks all good. We're happy with this. It doesn't look like there's any funny default names. Everything has been named. It's all descriptive. Yeah, this looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this. Now, you can go and um, uh, provide a couple of options from an approval. So I'm just going to tag approve. We don't have any policies that says you can't complete without approval, and you can do auto completion on approval and a whole bunch of workflows, but that we haven't set this up. This is basic, right? So at this point, our pull request is approved, right? You can see there's a tick box there. And at this point in time, we should complete it. However, before we complete it, I just want to disable our pipelines quickly. So, well, actually, that's irrelevant. That is irrelevant because we haven't gone that far yet. Let's go back here. So I'm going to say, yep, this is now completed. So I'm going to mark as complete. So you have a couple of options here, and now think about this way. If we go back to this diagram, so let's say that the user story isn't complete, right? So we haven't finished our development work, we haven't done our testing, or we've done one task. We might have multiple merges to be done. And if this is our main development branch for this story, and it could be a story, it could be an epic, it could be a release, or it could be you might have a branch per sprint, for instance. At the end of the sprint, you do your retro, um, uh, you sort of merge all your branches down into that one sprint, and then you do your code review and retro on that. Um, so I'm going to say that there was no other tasks and that the job is done. So we're going to merge it down. But at this point in time, when you complete, you have this option here to delete the branch after merging. So this is general good housekeeping. You don't want old stale branches that are irrelevant to linger around because it just causes a mess. But there might be a case where you might want to untick this because you're going to take a new branch of this development branch for the next task, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just delete it. And then you see this, it's going to say complete associated work items. So it's going to take this, um, um, the user story, and it's going to actually go ahead and say it's done. So I'm going to say complete merge. And we're done. Cool. If we go back to our board, hopefully it has now tagged. Yeah, there you go. It's now closed and completed. Um, it is, yeah, depending on your workflow, um, I would recommend that you should probably have yeah, if we look at this, one can argue that the acceptance criteria has not been fulfilled yet because it's not deployed into production. So you might want to set up a custom workflow or a custom swim lane as a hold pattern. So when you close or complete a job, it goes into a ready for release or ready for build, just so that you don't, uh, yeah, just so you don't say that job is done, right? Because this all depends on what your agile what your agile policies say about definition of done, etc., etc. But that's a whole different subject that's out of scope for this video. Anyway, so now we've effectively now uh, completed this one, and if we refresh here, it's going to throw an error. So it's going to say, oh, you don't have a branch. So now we step back. Oh, where's our main branch? Why can't I see my main branch? This happens once in a while. Let's just refresh the workspace. And there we go. Now we're back to main. Yep. Boom. So now if we go into our main branch, we can now see that we have the two new data sets and we have our pipeline. That one. Cool. Now, at this point in time, um, I'm now going to step back to the next phase. So now we built the code, but we haven't published and deployed this into the actual workspace and updated all the artifacts. They're sitting in code updated. So we worked with them. It's all good, and everything should be fine. But if we go now back into our project, we have this thing called pipelines, right? So the first one is our build pipeline. So remember what I said in the beginning, that our configuration here, where our publish branch is our main branch. So when we click this publish, what's going to happen in our repository is that it's going to populate the ARM templates, so these JSON files, right? So this is the actual deployment, the actual workspace, right? And it's going to put together also update the parameter files, etc. Right? Now, if in order for us to now be able to work with these, so we're going to need to go and get our build a release pipeline that's going to automatically push um, that into our production, right? Into this environment. And we're not source controlled here. This works directly, see, not set up to connect to a Git repo. So in order for us to get this done, we're going to need to grab these JSON files that are in here, and we're going to need to put them in as a release artifact. Okay, so we need to build a release pipeline. So I've built a release pipeline. I'm going to step into that now. So if we go and edit this one, and this is all documented in in Bradley's article. So he goes through all of this. There's one thing that you just need to change, but it's a minor thing. Or it might not even be something that you need to change. Maybe I just overlooked how he set up his release pipeline. So I used a Windows VM. It's possible he used a Linux VM, and I wasn't. No, he used a Windows VM. Sorry, just check that. So anyway, let's step through this. So we basically, our release is a copy. So we copy the ARM templates to our build artifact staging directory. So that's this is a temporary or a staging folder on our build agent. So this is a Windows VM that we've got for the agent job. And what you do is you basically go and select the folder that's got the same name as your workspace out of your repo. So this is your publish folder, right? And then you just tell it you want all JSON files, so star.json. And then this is where it will fail for you if you follow Bradley's article, because he uses a forward slash, so like Linux style. So I think that he actually had the screenshot he used here on the agent. Sorry, trying to find it. Anyway, the screenshot he used for the agent was a Windows agent, which is default. But I think that he changed it to a Linux agent. And this is just preference, right? So anyway, that needs to be backslash. So we're gonna copy it to the staging directory on the pipeline agent runtime, backslash arm into this arm folder. And then what we're going to do is we're going to publish that as an artifact. So we then go and take that staging folder, so the artifact staging folder, and we create an artifact called ASW drop. So this is Azure Synapse Workspace drop. And that's it. And then we push it obviously to our pipeline publish location. Cool. So the other thing that's important, this is why we changed the publish branches, because we don't want to generate these JSON files um, every time you commit into your repository. So you want to be able to do a whole bunch of pull requests and merge them into your main branch or your master branch, and then do a single sort of publish run. So it allows you to do final testing in that. So the trigger for this build pipeline that builds these build artifacts is to trigger on the main branch. So you tick in this enable continuous integration, and you want it to trigger on the main branch, and then you want to filter so that only when there's a change to that specific folder, and this is where those JSON files are going to end up, right? So that's something you want in, and then that's that. So I'm going to I'm just going to go step out of this. So I am going to go back here. So now we have our main branch and our merge requests or our pull request is finished. Everything is good. We're now sitting at this state where we need to do a build. So all we do, and hopefully everything goes well, is we go to our workspace. So whomever looks after the specific build or the actual build actions, they just go ahead and click publish. We're going to see the artifacts we created. We go ahead and say publish, and hopefully everything works and the demigods are happy. And so far, it's taking a bit too long. Please work. Please, demigods, be happy. I think we're going to have an error. No, oh, there we go. Publish completed. Whew. So now it's going to be building, yeah, so now it's generating the ARM templates. And there we go, templates created. So now if we go into pipelines, and we go ahead and we go refresh, there you go. You can see that the pipeline just triggered. We step into that, and you can see there's a pipeline running for 3 seconds. We can step into that, and it's running. I'm not going to tick into agent job because if you do this yourself, you can do that. It's just going to spit out all my subscription IDs and a whole bunch of weird IDs. I don't want them splattered all over the screen. You can see, actually, you know what? Stuff it. I'll kill everything. There we go. It's busy deploying or running, and post job, and we should be good. There we go. One job. And hopefully, oh, okay, it says it's done. And it says one artifact produced. There's our artifact, our ARM folder, and there's our templates. Woohoo! Cool. So now, here comes, well, I've also got an email notification saying that my build was successful. Great. So that pipeline worked like a bomb. Now, you're thinking that, okay, well, that's great. Now, how does that gets pushed out? So we got this thing called release pipeline. Now, I forgot to disable the trigger for the release, so it automatically is busy releasing. So let's just step into the pipeline. I'm just going to go ahead and say edit, and I can show you how it's set up. So what we do is we have an artifact. So this artifact is this is the build artifact that we created. And what this job does, it uses the Synapse deployment task for workspaces. So this is the add-in. You need to install this into your repository. Now remember, we were talking about the parameters. So or the key vault. So we're going to need to, at some point in production, override that connection string parameter. Oh, but we weren't using key vault, so that's not going to work. So we'll deal with that. Well, it would be dealt with here to go and modify that. So anyway, let's see what happened with this pipeline. Okay, let's just go into it again. I just want to edit it or show the job again. So the deploy package is basically it's an ARM deployment. So what you give it is you give it the folder. So you browse to the ARM file, to the workspace configuration or template file. You hit OK. So obviously it's busy running, so it can't be edited. And then you do the same and drop in the parameter file. You then tell it which connection to run. So this is your deployment agent, or so it's your service connector, right? Or service connector. So that one must have access to the resource group, right? You tell it which resource group your target workspace is in, and you give it the workspace name that you want to deploy to. In this case, it's a prod one. Now, this uh, this add-in, this Synapse workspace deployment add-in, manages all the default background connectors and make sure that all the default parameters out of the template are being managed. So updates things like it needs to find out what my default file system name is, what my default, it manages all of that, so your ARM template gets updated on the fly based on your target workspace. Cool. So let's stick back to the pipeline. So let's see if this deployed successfully, and it looks like it did. So if we step into that, you can see what it does. So it initialized the job, it downloaded the artifact that I had set up, and it then fired off the deployment, and you can see here the ran. So let's see if our production has been updated. So in our pipelines, we only have these. So if we go ahead, now you can see it's not connected to source control. So if we go ahead and refresh, wow, there's our pipeline. Interesting. Now this one won't work out of the box because this one is going to speak to, and we'll see here. See, we're going to need to update this. And this is something you would manage through parameters in the deployment, but we'll cover that elsewhere. So if we just update that to prod, go ahead and say publish all, then this should work. Ideally, this should be managed through Key Vault. You shouldn't have to touch it. So if we test this connection now, that should succeed, hopefully. And if it doesn't, I have to grant the service principal access to the SQL pool and then test again. Oh boy. Demo failure. This is going to break. I can see it's going to break. Sometime today, please. I'm just going to close out and step back into it. Preview data, please work. I think I need to grant the service principal name, so let me just go open, go and edit that one. Oh, there's clearly a problem here. Okay, something went a bit pear-shaped, and it won't allow me to test connection. Oh, right. So that's not dev. That should be prod. Okay. This stuff obviously. Oh, connection failed because I don't have access. Oh, and I don't have the database called on demand either. That was something I forgot. So let's just cancel this. This called the changes. I just want to go ahead and fix this so I can just actually complete the task. Just going to create a new script. Create database. Nope, not that. On demand. Okay, so that should now be available here. Yes, it is. Happiness is. And then I obviously need to create the user for that database. So I'm going to be cheating. I've got old code. Sorry, let's just do this. So I want to create a login for the prod workspace, or I want to make sure that the service principal for the prod workspace can. Oh, sorry, I missed that. Try that again. There we go. And then I just need to give it DBO because this guy's been going to be used in the future to manage things like other things. Right. So uh, Bradley's got good coverage on this. He's got some PowerShell scripts on how to manage all of these, the users and access rights and all of that. So yeah, please take a look at his tutorial. It's great. Right. So now create granted user access. So if we now go and edit this and we go and update the default value to prod. And then, put that parameter in and then give it on demand as the database. Hit test connection and that should now work. Yeah, hit apply and we're good. Okay, so obviously this is not acceptable in the production environment. You shouldn't have to do this. Right. Let's just hit. I don't need to test connection there, but I need to publish all quickly. So I'm working in the production instance, and that's obviously not great. Okay, but that all worked fine. So let's just go and this one's still sitting there previewing data. Let's try to close it and reopen it, and let's see if that helps. Source, preview data. Let's see. There we go. There's our UTC date. And if we go and we browse, so we haven't fired this, right? So in our ADLS Gen 2 folder, there should be nothing. And if we go back to the pipeline and we run a debug on this thing, it will probably break because, no, it shouldn't break. There you go. Worked like a bomb. And then let's just step back here into the file system, refresh. There you go. There's our UTC date, and there's a Parquet file. Yay! So now in production, see, in production we're all good. So now our dear friends, our data scientists, and whomever can go and get the UTC date of the Parquet file. Interesting. And there you go. Boom. Works like fun. Right. Okay, so this was mildly interesting, but at least it's full of demo flaws, but so is life, and so is demos. I will be putting a link to um, the well, all reference material, um, and yeah, there will be another session in about a week's time where we'll go through the management of things like pools and your data warehouse code, your SQL code for your data warehouses, your DDL, your DML, and how to manage those things. And we'll also look into how to handle the things that didn't work out uh, in this demo, like uh, for example the parameterization of the connection strings and how to resolve those so that you don't have to modify them once they've been deployed. But from a cleanliness perspective, you at least have a target environment that is disconnected from source control but gets pushed or updated whenever you build or publish artifacts. So yeah, I hope this was informative, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Have a good one.